I can confirm that I am more than 3 years old and reading this book. It is a solid book. This isn't even for 3-year-olds. This is a good book. This is high IQ. High IQ. Not just for a 3-year-old, for high IQ. Hello everybody, it is Zen, and today I'm going to be doing another book review. This time, I'm doing another fantasy book review. This time, it's not a really big fantasy book. It's a tiny little baby fantasy book for children. The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Now, I took this book from the library just because I saw it out there and I recognized it from Daniel Green's video from the top 5 most sold books of all time, fantasy books of all time. And so, I heard of it, I thought, you know what, that sounds kind of interesting. And I saw it in my library, and so I picked it up, and it was so short, I'm like, dude, I'll read this in like 20 minutes and be done with it. And so I did that, and absolutely, I'm really happy I did that. Now, this is a children's book, okay? You know that. Children's book, it's got children's pictures, it's got lots of children-y. My lighting is great, wow. But there's pictures, you can see those. There are pictures in this. And it's far more impressive than I originally thought it would be. By fantasy, I do mean that this isn't exactly, Lord of the Rings fantasy or anything like that. This just incorporates fantastical elements, planets, aliens, not that many, but just kind of alien-ish, as well as, just a little bit of magic, tiny bit of magic. But there's not too much magical about this, except for the fact that it is very, very clearly a fantasy book. This definitely would be a fantasy book. Low fantasy, but, still. It clocks in at about 135 pages, and they are absolutely baby pages, as you can tell. Plus, it took me about 30 minutes to 40 minutes to read. Very, very easy, and is originally a French book, which was translated to English. Now, I say that I really, really like this book. Why is that? Well, for a couple of reasons, but honestly, I think everything about this book was done as well as it could have been done. Understand that it is a children's book, so I have to change my standards. I can't be rating the Lord of the Rings, like weighing this against the Lord of the Rings. That's just not fair. This is made to be a children's book, but is surprisingly good for adults as well, or for teenagers, and I just enjoyed it for what it was made out to be. Not this great, grand, epic fantasy adventure, just a cute little book that had quite some significance in terms of how I think. Let me begin with the plot. This book started off very odd, as I noticed. It's in first person, and we started off completely unrelated to what I thought the book would be about. And so we started off, and we kind of go through, and I'm like, okay, where's this going? Well, this is kind of cool, but where's it going? And it was really, really quick. It got there in like a good 8 pages. Yeah, roughly, it was in the second chapter, which was like a good 10 pages. But technically only 3 pages. So we got 3 pages into the book, and we're into the actual plot of things. It was at that point that I really, really began to get interested. It had a very, very strong hook. The beginning of the story very well encapsulates the entirety of the story. It's about the difference between children and adults. And so that's what we start off going into. And the beginning, it encapsulates that great. I love the way it sets that up, and we head into the main plot where we actually see the differences. The plot is laid out very, very well as this kid. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it is kind of a subplot within the main plot, but it's a very, very grand, big subplot that takes up majority of the book. And so it's very, very easy to think of this as the main plot or the subplot, I don't know, but it's kind of not exactly happening currently. It's kind of a backstory. So we go into this book expecting, a little prince, but that's not exactly what we get. Instead, we end up getting a very, very cool backstory about why this little kid is sad. It was laid out very, very easily. Like, it was like first plot, second plot, third plot, fourth plot, fifth plot, and you could just very easily count them out from each other. Like, here's the first one, second one, third one, and you can easily pull them apart, but at the same time they meld together so perfectly. It's like they use perfect transitions, and it's just a very well put together book. The ending ended up being extremely, extremely good, with a very, very good way of wrapping it all together, and it was not exactly great at this, we didn't, not great in the general terms, as the normal terms. It doesn't wrap things up with a great battle or anything, or with a physical, like, this happened and everyone was happy. It kind of ended off in a little bit of a cliffhanger, but it ended off in a cliffhanger that was significantly important in terms of how this book was supposed to feel. And so that made it really, really great for me. So understand this is a children's book, so of course the plot is going to be very simple, and that's why I described it like that. But even for me, that seemed like a very good way of putting a plot. Now, the characters are simple as well. We didn't get an entire chunk of character development, but we got significantly enough character development in order to basically say, this is what the character is. If you were to say this to the character, you know that they would act this way instead of this way. We don't know exactly what this way will be, because it's a children's book. You can't exactly put that much effort into designing a character, but you know it's going to be A. Like, you know for sure it's going to be A, because this character, although it's not very specifically designed, we know it basically what this guy is like. And so we go on through the character, and I find every single character to be the best characters that I've read in a long time. These characters, man, these characters are awesome. They're so short. There's such a short time that they're in the book, but they end up being so incredibly interesting, like every single point that they exist. Like right here, this character, he is very interesting. Even though like we barely know about him, we see his situation, and we're like, that although it's not like very difficult to comprehend, that's an interesting scenario. Like I never considered that even being possible at any point in time, yet this is oddly interesting to me. So the characters are just brilliant for the way this book is written. It's a children's book, but these characters, although not extremely layered or anything like that, it is very powerful in the way it portrays its characters. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. The writing in this book was amazing. It's such a flowing, like, it flowed perfectly. It's just great. It was a wonderful book, and I'm sure like children could read it, but there were a couple phrases in there that I could see were not translated the best from French to English, so I'm gonna give it a pass on that just because it was translated. But there weren't that many, so either way it doesn't matter. However, technically speaking, there were a bunch of things in that book that I was like, I don't exactly know what that means, and a kid will definitely not know what that means, so maybe that's a problem. But of course I was reading it, so I don't have an issue. I think this book shines out when we talk about the themes within this book. It's just built on this, right? It's built on the themes that go on. And I think that these themes are so well defined, a kid could understand them. Like, you could give this to a kid and they'll come out with this very interesting understanding of what this book is trying to portray. And I did the same thing. I went into this book thinking, this is gonna be a cute little book, but it's just so powerfully interesting that I'm like, okay, I actually have this new way of thinking now, a thing that I've never thought about, a philosophy that I've never thought about, and it's just coming out in this, and I find that extremely interesting, but it's so well defined. Like, the entire plot is based on it, but it's based on it so easily that it doesn't feel forced at all, and I really enjoyed that. So if for nothing else, you want to read this book, do it for the themes. The themes in this is incredibly awesome. You know, and you can give this book to anybody and they'll enjoy it. So I understand why this is one of the most sold books of all time. It's not just a children's book. Although, you know, it's the entirety of this book is children's elements. Adults will definitely like it and they'll see, oh, that's an interesting way of thinking of it, because of course this is a comparison between children and adults. Children will look at it like, okay, this is how adults think. This is how I should be thinking, which is in a good way, like you gotta be creative and stuff like that. And so the adults read this and they think, okay, this is what children think. Of course, that makes sense, we know that. But adults, this is what they think about adults, which is an interesting way of thinking. So basically, themes are brilliant, characters are brilliant, plot is brilliant, writing is pretty good. So overall, I would give this book a straight up 5 out of 5, because here's the thing, okay? 5 out of 5, that means that I absolutely love this book. I would recommend this book to anyone, and I would reread this book at any point. Also, this means it had a significant impact on my life, which technically it did. I didn't expect to give this a 5 out of 5. I thought I would give it a 4 out of 4, but this book technically qualified for a 5 out of 5 because it did every single thing that a 5 out of 5 book. And so I've got a children's book that I gave a 5 out of 5, which is impressive. This book is great. And it taught me a lesson too, which is brilliant in for a children's book, or for any book at all. I don't learn many lessons. My IQ is not that high. And so, you know, when I learn a lesson, it's pretty good. Straight up 5 out of 5. And if there's anything else that you guys want to know about this book, please let me know in the comments down below, and I can answer any questions about this. If you want to know if you want to read it, let me know. And I'll basically just say read it, because it's really good. Don't buy the book, okay? I don't think that this is a book that you'll keep around for a long time unless you have kids, in which case definitely get this book, give it to them, let them read it over and over again. It's going to be wonderful. But if you're just an adult that wants to read it, go right ahead, but definitely go for a library. If you want to go for a physical copy, maybe, but you know, digital copy's okay as well. Just go for, you know, don't buy this. I don't think you're gonna reread it multiple times, but if you like really like it, then go ahead and buy it. This book is just wonderful for, you know, a one-time read to think and put it away. Just great. If you enjoyed this review, please leave a like down below and subscribe to see any future fantasy books. I'm not going to be doing any other children's books review, so if that's a problem for you, don't subscribe. Just like this video, that's good enough for me. But if you want to see other fantasy books, make sure to subscribe, because I'm definitely going to be going into a lot of fantasy books very soon. For example, I'm going to be starting the Stormlight Archive very soon, within the next couple of weeks, and I'm also going to be reviewing a book that has not come out yet, and so it's a booktube book, and if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Definitely subscribe if you want to see that, as well as a King Killer 2 video, which that's coming out soon as well. So all that stuff is coming out in a couple of months, or next month, I don't even know. So make sure to subscribe for those, and leave a like. Tell me what you want to see me review, and that is pretty much all I have for you guys today, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.